Welcome to 5 Minutes of Work, and I'm going to show you all how to do this. Kind of. Here's kind of like the base of what you can be working with. So obviously when it comes to composite layering, what composite layering is you are shooting several different shots in front of a blue screen. And then you layer them all on top of each other, and then you composite them into a scene. I know a lot of people like to use Keylight. I don't recommend using Keylight. I think Keylight is crap, but I use Primat Keyer. Primat Keyer is more precise because what it does is that whatever shade of a color that you select, and when you go through the cleaning up process, it's going to specifically only take out that shade of blue. So as you can see here, and this goes with like other colors too. So as you can see here, like, oh, I have blue on my Spartan, and there's also blue back here. So over here where you see select background, you're just going to press and hold, and you're going to see all these little white dots. And what I like to do is I like to go up and over, around here, you know, get over here and all that. And then just let go. And as you can see, we already have our background there. And I'm a little transparent. So a way to combat this is you go to clean background, and you want to set your view from comp to matte. And the goal here is to try to make the background black and make the subject white. So as you can see here, I have some gray on my shoulder pads, my face, and all that. That needs to be white. I switched to clean background because sometimes there are little, you know, stragglers here and there. You know, you see these little pixelation and stuff. And once you go over it with the clean background tool, they go away. Because you don't want any you know, artifacts or anything in your final product whenever you render it out in After Effects seasons. So there's some here. It's very faint, so you have to zoom in and really look for it. This form of like keying is a little bit more time consuming, but it's definitely worth it for the final product. See, there's some stuff right there, and then it goes away. A little bit of some stuff over here, some stragglers, and that's it. Now to clean up your foreground, you want to choose Clean Foreground or Clean FG. And then you're going to go over these little spots here. And you see how it's starting to kind of bring back everything for you already. So you've got some up here. And whenever you do this, sometimes, like depending on how involved the keying is and how close the shade of color that you're keying from the background to the foreground is, will determine whether or not like some artifacts will return in the background while you're taking stuff out from the foreground. So you have to kind of play with it a little bit. But so far right here, this actually looks like a really good key. So we're going to change from view from matte back to comp. And as you can see, it looks a little bit better. There is some artifacting here. So if you see any artifacting like this, you can go back to clean background and just go over it like that, you know, just kind of take it out. Now, we're not out of the woods yet. If you zoom in, you can kind of see there's a little bit of a blue outline, which is no bueno. And when it comes to keying with literally anything, you're going to get a kind of a jagged edges. So what I do is I go to Effect, Matte Choker, and it kind of cleans up those edges for us. See? Nice and smooth, no blue edge. And that's it. Pretty good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on our background. So on our background here, depending on what kind of a shot you're wanting to go for, like a lot of people like utilizing the widescreen format, and a lot of people just like to use the standard 16:9 format. So to get a blur in your background, I've noticed people utilize like fast blur or Gaussian blur, and those are incorrect. You want to use camera lens blur, and it's under the blur and sharpen category, often under the effects and presets. So you just drag and drop that onto blur and sharpen like so. And you want to make sure that you check repeat edge pixels under edge behavior. This is very important. Now, depending on the type of bokeh that you want to simulate, and what bokeh is the blurriness of the background. So you see all this? This is called bokeh, where you can see, like, this is a hexagon because we have hexagon chosen. I like to go for decagon because it's more rounded and it's smoother and it looks a lot sleek. It looks a lot sleeker. So, depending if you're wanting to simulate spherical lenses, which a lot of photography lenses are like that in most photographs that you will see from professional photographers, you would want to stick with what you have here. You want to have an aspect ratio of 1, a rotation of 0, and roundness of 0. And you can just kind of choose what shape of bokeh you want. Typically, good lenses, decagon is associated with high-end lenses, and it looks a lot cleaner, as I stated earlier. Now, if you're wanting to simulate an anamorphic look, which is with widescreen format, you want to change your aspect ratio to 2, and then your rotation to 90 degrees. And then you get that nice vertical oval bokeh look, which is what is commonly associated with 2x anamorphic lenses. Now that we have that, I prefer anamorphic because I'm a huge anamorphic shooter. I use anamorphic lenses right now with most of my camera gear, and it's just my favorite type of look. And every time you're using lens flares as well, lens flares are associated with anamorphic lenses because it's a distortion with anamorphic lenses. So let's go ahead and put myself back in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, actually I'll just copy it from over here. We're going to bring our widescreen in, and we're going to make sure we have it on the top. You always want to make sure you have your widescreen aspect ratio above everything. I've seen a lot of people put it below adjustment layers when they're coloring, and that's a big no-no. You want to make sure you have this. So now that we have our widescreen bars applied, now we can kind of adjust our subject here, and we kind of have a nice eye line here, so we're going to want to keep him there. Now, another thing that we need to do is we need to match him to the background. And what I do to match my stuff to the background is I go to color correction under effects and presets, and I apply CC toner to my top layer. Okay, so it's automatically going to do this. It's not going to look pretty, but that's fine. So real quick, we'll go back to our background layer, and we will turn off camera lens blur. And back to our subject layer where CC toner is, we're going to grab the eyedropper. We're going to click that for midtones, and we're going to find the most common color in the background, and that's kind of this this green steelish kind of a wall back here, and it's going to kind of put that imitate that color over our subject layer. And I always set blend with original to about 50% to kind of really get him to try and fit in with the background. This looks kind of okay. Let's maybe set it to 75. Yeah, okay, that's not bad. Alright, so this is a good start, and we can turn our camera lens blur back on for the background. This is great. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to want to apply a color grade to this. And what you're going to do for that is you're going to right click in this gray space area near your timeline. You're going to go to new, and you're going to select adjustment layer. And you want to be sure you move that adjustment layer below your 235 at widescreen bars, as I stated earlier. Now, a lot of people like to use Magic Bullet. I prefer utilizing LUTs, and I use Lumetri Color, which is right here under Color Correction in the Effects and Presets tab. Lumetri Color comes standard with most Adobe products. You can have it's in Premiere, it's in After Effects, and you should have it if you're using any of the updated versions. So what you want to do is you want to hit the drop down on Creative here, and you want to go to Look. So mine's set at none. So if you click that and go to Browse, I have all my stuff in assigned folders. So I have a LUTs folder. I use the Triune Digital Cinematic LUTs pack, which you can purchase on at Triune's website on their store. And we're going to use the Drive LUT. The Drive LUT is most commonly used for like a teal and orange look, and it does a really good job at that. So when you have all these different tools like intensity, so if you set like the intensity to 150, it's going to intensify the look of the LUT. Or if you set it to 50%, you know, it's going to take more away. So why don't we set this to 150, right? Because our background looks a little dark, but our subject's he's kind of suffering right now, you know, losing all the detail in the visor, but that's totally fine. So what we're going to do to combat that is we're actually going to duplicate our subject layer right here, right? And you just want to hit Control D. Now we have two of them. And then on this layer, we're going to remove Matte Choker. Just going to get rid of that because we're not going to need it. Now this technique here is for brightening up visors. This only works best when your subject is stationary and isn't really moving around. If he moves around or looks a certain way, you're going to have to do some tracking, which is a little bit more advanced for some people that it's more time consuming. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to get our mask tool up here by the by the T for the text tool. And we're just gonna mask around the visor area. Now, what we're gonna do is under color correction, we're gonna choose hue and saturation and drag and drop it onto our visor layer. All right, so once you have hue and saturation applied, what we're gonna do is you wanna make sure your channel control is on master for this first part. So we're gonna set our master saturation to 50. We're gonna set our master lightness to 20, and that's gonna brighten up the entire visor, okay? So now what we're going to do is under reds, we want to set the red saturation to 50. We're going to want to set the yellow saturation to 50. And we're going to want to set all of the other colors to -100 to completely desaturate all of them so they don't really poison the color in the visor. As you can see, this looks kind of gross, and I totally agree. That's fine. If we go back to master, it doesn't really look like, this looks too red. So we're gonna wanna change the hue to maybe more of a golden color like so. And this looks nice. We turn that down just a bit, maybe the lightness up to 10 perhaps. Okay. Actually, we could probably leave the lightness at 5, and that looks fine. Yeah, that looks great. Now what you want to do is in your timeline there, you want to hit the drop down and expand this visor layer. And you want to go to your mask layer, and then you want to expand mask 1. And let's set our feather to maybe 30. Let's see what that looks like. Does that look a little better? Why don't we do 50 just to be safe? I had an old buddy back in the day that used to tell me, he says, just blur the shit out of it, no one will ever notice, and he's never been more correct. So as you can see here, this is before visor correction, and this is after visor correction. So you can, there's all that information is there for you to work with. You just have to think outside the box and really experiment with your image. So now that we have this, we're going to start adding some lights in there. A little too light. So what we'll probably do is under basic correction in Lumetri Color is we'll maybe bump the contrast up to 50, you know, to kind of darken things a bit. Yeah, that looks nice. And let's go ahead and collapse that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply some lights. Now I know a lot of people in the machinima community have optical flares. A lot of people like to use them like, oh, for the streaks and all that kind of stuff. But they can also be used to light a scene. So a way to do that is if you right click down here, go to New, Solid. Want to make sure your solid layer is black, and then hit OK. Pull that just above your adjustment layer because we don't want any of that color to be you know, affecting the look of the flare that we're making. So you want to go to Video Copilot, which should be at the bottom of the list in the Effects and Presets tab. Go to Optical Flares and just drag and drop into your solid layer. Then you want to go to Options up here, and you want to kind of choose the flare you want. I already have custom preset flares. These are my go-to ones. I like these because they kind of, you know, make some cool looking effects and pull them off to the side. So I'm going to use this one. This one looks pretty cool. So we're going to hit OK. Then what you want to do is, since we're going to be applying multiple optical flares to the same solid, you want to make sure your render mode is set from on black to over original. And then you want to set it, your blending mode from normal in your timeline to add. And bam, there it is. Alright, so if we turn this off, let's try to take a look at where most of the light is coming from. So as you can see, the light is coming from the top of his head down this way. So we're gonna take this and we're just gonna put it right up there. Alright. And then we're gonna drag it below our adjustment layer in the timeline. So now it's pretty good to work with once you have like your flares selected, to kind of work with the color below your adjustment layer, because if you can get it to look good with the color that's on your adjustment layer, and then when you bring it up above it, it's going to look a lot better. And let me show you what I mean by that. So as you can see, we kind of have like a faded teal white color kind of going over everything. So if we switch our color from white to maybe, let's add a little bit of some blue in there. Yeah, like that. You see? Now we're kind of getting this little nice cool glow over everything. And then let's put that above our adjustment layer, And there you go. And then it kind of feathers itself out a bit. Now, if this is a little too bright, you can always turn your brightness down to maybe 75% to kind of pull back on it just a little bit. And then if we want to add a little bit more, like let's say off to the side or so, maybe just a streak, you can actually duplicate your optical flares. So if you click your optical flares in your solid layer and hit Control D, it's going to duplicate your flare for you. And you're going to want to bring this down here. Maybe put it right there. You could just put your flare there and leave it at that. Or what you could do is go to your background layer and copy and paste your camera lens blur. So if you select that, hit Control C, then go back up to your optical flares and then hit Control V, it will paste your camera lens blur and feather out your flare to make it look a little bit more organic looking. Now, if this looks a little too bright, a good way to combat this and to make your flares and your lighting blend a little bit more with your image is if you go to color correction over here in your list again and you find curves. If you drag and drop curves onto your blank solid, start in the middle, click, press and hold, and just bring it down a bit like so. And that's it. And you can do a nice little before and after. And that's pretty much it, guys. There's a lot more stuff you can do with this. My specific techniques are a little bit more involved. There are more advanced techniques with visor correction and everything else, along with other color grading applications that you can apply to this. But for just beginners, I think this is a really good way to start off. So I would really like to see more people utilizing this technique. So I hope this tutorial actually answers a lot of people's questions in the simplest way. I try to make it as simple as possible. I will also have a link to the Discord server, The Hub, which I am an admin on. And this is a primary technique that we practice in that server as well. We try to kind of stray away from traditional machinima looks and really try to push the envelope and go above and beyond everything visually as well as storytelling as well. So I hope to see you guys join in and stick around, and maybe you might be able to learn a little bit more than what I've shown here in this video from your peers that you will be able to meet. So thank you for watching, and be sure to leave a comment and subscribe, and I might put a couple more tutorials out in the future. I'm not sure. It depends on the amount of requests that I get, but I hope you enjoy this and have a nice day.